The day I was scheduled to leave for a business trip, I unearthed my boyfriend's secret. He had a Weibo account, opened long ago, and brimming with professions of love for another girl. He was willing to traverse 1,000 kilometers to cherish her, yet wouldn't even entertain a long-distance relationship with me, a mere 100 kilometers apart. He claimed to loathe traveling, yet for her, he'd amassed 213 long-haul train tickets. In this vast, swirling world, his heart belonged to Twilight, Moo Moo, while I was merely Dawn, Zhao Zhao. It was the very evening of my Zhengzhou business trip when the truth unfurled. My boyfriend, Jiangze, had sent his childhood friend to pick me up from the airport. At the welcome dinner, in a moment of careless exuberance, his friend let slip that Jiangze had a Weibo account with a substantial following. The remark was casual, almost an afterthought, but the instant it left his lips, every eye at the table instinctively swiveled towards me. I blinked, momentarily taken aback, yet my mind raced, latching onto the Weibo handle mentioned. I feigned nonchalance, smoothly steering the conversation to another topic. A collective sigh of relief seemed to ripple through the table, a reaction that only deepened my suspicion. Back in the sterile quiet of my hotel room, I opened Weibo and typed in the nickname I'd just heard. As the full handle populated the search bar, a jolt, like a sudden electric current, shot through me. Jiang Xin Xiang Mingyu. Jiangze, my boyfriend, and Xiao Mingyue, his first love. My heart pounded a frantic rhythm against my ribs. My finger hovered over the screen, then instinctively, I switched it off, plunging the room into deeper shadow. My knowledge of Jiangze's first love was hazy, a fleeting mention of a high school classmate he'd made in passing. Since we'd become a couple, I hadn't delved much into his past. But the collective unease, the palpable shift in atmosphere at dinner, it had ignited a burning curiosity within me. Taking a deep, steadying breath, I switched the screen back on and tapped to open the Weibo page. My breath hitched in my throat as I registered the timestamp of the latest post. It was the day before my trip, the day Jiangze and I had shared a coconut chicken dinner. His caption read, "Guess hot pot is still best enjoyed spicy." But Jiangze never ate spicy food. For a fleeting moment, I questioned if I'd found the wrong account. But then, my eyes scanned the comments section, and I froze. Haha, Jiang's palate is definitely being influenced by Mingyue. Jiang, do you even remember you can't handle spice at all? First there was Lu Zhishan uprooting the willow tree, and now we have Jiang conquering spicy hot pot for love. Did anyone notice Mingyue is wearing a dress today? Agreed. I'd call this move tomboy turns damsel in a dress for love. The account holder hadn't responded to any of these comments, yet neither had he refuted them. A knot of unease tightened in my stomach. Driven by a desperate hope that I'd stumbled upon the wrong profile, I zoomed in on the photo accompanying the post. And then I saw it, the unmistakable glimpse of fabric, the delicate hem of a skirt inadvertently captured in the corner of the frame. Ice water seemed to flood my veins, chilling me to the core. He wasn't averse to spicy food. He was just averse to sharing it with me. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. I scrolled down, each post a fresh shard of ice piercing my heart. After we'd started dating, his Weibo updates became less frequent, but they were still there, a digital breadcrumb trail leading back to her. Hour after hour bled away. It was past 3 in the morning when I finally reached the halfway point. Clutching my phone, I gazed out at the unfamiliar cityscape shimmering with the relentless pulse of traffic. A wave of disorientation washed over me. This city, this was where their story began, wasn't it? This place pulsed with their shared memories. But what had I done wrong? The question echoed in the hollow chambers of my mind, unanswered. A suffocating pressure built in my chest, a lump in my throat that refused to break into tears. Finally, at 3:30, my hand trembling, I dialed the number etched into my memory. The phone rang, each pulse echoing in the silent room, unanswered. As my courage began to dissipate, panic rising, I was about to hang up when the call connected. Hello? What's wrong? Jiangze's voice was languid, thick with sleep, low and husky, startlingly clear in the hushed hotel room. A torrent of resentment, a barrage of accusations, welled up within me, yet the words choked in my throat. Silence stretched between us, punctuated only by my ragged breaths. I wrestled with what to say, each carefully constructed sentence dissolving before I could speak it. Despite the crushing weight of disappointment, an insidious doubt began to creep in. Was he really in the wrong? He hadn't done anything, had he? He just couldn't forget. I almost managed to convince myself. Zhao Zhao, Jiangze murmured, his voice softening, do you miss me? His simple question was the final straw, the single thread that unraveled the carefully constructed dam holding back my emotions. The storm raging inside me abruptly subsided, replaced by an unnerving calm. And then, the tears came, a torrent I couldn't stem. Yes, I whispered, my voice cracking. Jiangze, I miss you. Will you come see me? In matters of the heart, I'd always been slow to react, reserved. Even after 3 years with Jiangze, my cheeks still flushed crimson when he took my hand. Hearing him say, I miss you, a phrase long absent from our conversations, would normally leave me tongue-tied with shy delight. Jiangze knew this about me, my quiet nature, my hesitant heart. My directness, my vulnerable plea, must have startled him. Silence hung heavy on the line, then, after a long pause, he spoke, his tone laced with hesitant reassurance. Zhao Zhao, sweetheart, you'll be back in a week. I'll pick you up then. We'll go to that coconut chicken place you love. I curled into myself, hugging my knees to my chest, my spine vibrating with suppressed tremors. Jiangze, I choked out, coconut chicken is everywhere. But I want to see you now. Aren't you on vacation? Didn't you say you'd be bored at home while I was away? Didn't you promise you'd come whenever I wanted to see you? Jiangze, my voice broke, tears streaming down my face. Shanghai to Zhengzhou is only a 2-hour flight, 6 hours by high-speed train. Can't you even come to see me? Despite my desperate attempts at control, a sob escaped, then another, each one tearing through the fragile veneer of my composure. The only response was the deafening silence on the other end of the line. In that moment, a bitter truth crystallized within me. Only children who are cherished and indulged have the right to cry and be comforted. I was not one of them. As my sobs gradually subsided, a cold voice finally cut through the silence. It was Jiangze, his tone sharp, devoid of warmth. Lin Zhao, are you done with this melodrama? This business trip was your idea, remember? I advised against it. This job is your choice. I told you to quit, but you wouldn't listen. Lin Zhao, you're an adult. You need to take responsibility for your decisions. He was right. I was responsible for my choices. Silently, I wiped away the tears, and with them, it felt like the last embers of my affection for Jiangze were extinguished. Jiangze, seemingly oblivious to the tectonic shift in my emotions, offered an olive branch, a silent invitation for me to back down. He waited. After an excruciatingly long silence, he sighed, as if weary, and adopted a more reasonable tone, attempting to rationalize his stance. Zhao Zhao, I've already been more than accommodating regarding your job and this trip. So you have no right to be angry with me. But I'm not mad. Just focus on work, and when you get back, quit. Stay home, I can afford to support you. His reprimands, his justifications, faded into a distant hum as my thoughts drifted away. Moments later, my voice, calm and even, cut through his monologue. Jiangze, I said, let's break up. Before he could respond, I ended the call. As silence descended upon the room, a strange sense of detachment washed over me. In my life, neither particularly long nor short, a life where I'd rarely dared even to raise my hand in class, I had been truly brave only twice. Once, 3 years ago, when I'd quit my job in Suzhou and moved to Shanghai for Jiangze. And now, just moments ago, when I'd initiated a breakup with the man I'd loved for 3 years. That very night, I checked out of the hotel Jiangze had booked for me. My phone screen went dark, and I didn't bother to turn it back on. I imagined Jiangze was probably angry with me right now. Angry that I'd woken him up in the middle of the night, angry at my unreasonable outburst, angry that I dared to break up with him. He had ample reasons to be annoyed, but he likely wouldn't be heartbroken. After all, it was just losing someone he didn't love. What was there to be sad about? But wasn't he the one who'd confessed his love first? My mind swirled, a chaotic vortex of fragmented memories, snapshots of our 3 years together. Our relationship hadn't been a whirlwind romance, but it had been stable, comfortable. Every weekend, without fail, he'd patiently accompany me shopping, then take me to see a movie, usually something that had been a blockbuster a year or two prior. I'd teased him about being an old soul, stuck in the past, and he'd just smile without comment. Earlier that year, he'd arranged for our parents to meet, and wedding plans had been set in motion. As we were leaving after the meeting, my mother had pulled me aside, her voice earnest. Zhao Zhao, Jiangze is a good man. His parents seem reasonable too. With our family's background, finding a family as well off and understanding as theirs is rare. You need to cherish this. Her words had left a knot of unease in my stomach, but I'd said nothing, just offered a polite smile and nod. Yes, Jiangze was a good man. In 3 years, we'd barely argued. He was always polite and respectful to my parents. Even with this business trip, which he'd vehemently opposed even going so far as to actually get angry with me for the first time. Once he realized I was determined, he'd secretly booked me the nicest hotel and arranged for his local friend to pick me up. So, was I wrong? If I hadn't searched for that Weibo account, would I have remained blissfully ignorant of Qiao Mingyue's existence? If I hadn't come to Zhengzhou, would Jiangze in my eyes still be the man deeply in love with me? But there were no ifs. And I, sadly, was never Jiangze's moon. After spending the entire night poring over every post on Jiangze's Weibo, all those moments I'd interpreted as signs of his deep love for me now seemed like a cruel joke. Every word on that account mocked my naivete, my foolishness. After seeing it all, I'd rushed to the bathroom and dry-heaved for a long time. In that moment, I knew, with chilling certainty, that I probably didn't love Jiangze anymore. As dawn broke, I gathered the shattered pieces of my emotions, concealing the exhaustion etched around my eyes with makeup. Bag packed, I prepared to leave. Just then, a message from Jiangze pinged on my silent phone. Enough with the childish tantrum. I'm not even angry anymore. Our parents called about booking the banquet hall. They want your input. Let me know if you have any preferences. Knowing what I now knew, Jiangze's message was suddenly, brutally clear. Every word, every line, was a carefully constructed reminder of his control, a condescending offering of reconciliation, but utterly devoid of love or genuine concern. With a decisive swipe, I blocked all of Jiangze's contact information. I massaged the stiffness from my face, plastered on a professional smile, and headed downstairs. The contact person from the collaborating company was already waiting. He turned as I approached, a wide, welcoming grin spreading across his face. He was a tall, boisterous northeasterner named Su Ming. We'd exchanged messages before my trip, but we were practically strangers. The moment he saw me, he flashed a dazzling, slightly goofy smile. Sister Lin. Welcome to Zhengzhou. His exuberant greeting caught me off guard, making me feel oddly flustered. Please, don't be so formal, I mumbled, shaking my head. Just call me Lin Zhao. Su Ming, seemingly deaf to my polite protest, simply gestured towards the car he'd pulled up. As we drove, Su Ming launched into a non-stop monologue, a masterclass in social obliviousness. Discovering I was 2 years younger than him, he awkwardly scratched his head, then switched to calling me Little Lin. For the most part, I just listened, nodding occasionally, as he filled the car with his rambling chatter. When he brought up my abrupt hotel change from the previous night, I hadn't even formulated a plausible explanation, but he'd already convinced himself that hotel was outrageously expensive. Sure, we're not exactly broke, but we're not suckers either, right? Good thing you switched, saved some company money. For the next hour, his voice was a constant hum in my ear. By the time we reached our destination, I felt a strange ringing in my ears, a dizzying sense of unreality. Perhaps it was Su Ming's easygoing manner, his almost instant familiarity, but somehow, he ended up being my primary contact for the project. The meeting, despite the constant background noise of Su Ming's enthusiastic commentary, went smoothly. As the collaboration deepened, and the scope of the project expanded, my business trip was extended for another week. Since our terse phone call and my subsequent digital ghosting, Jiangze had remained silent. It was typical Jiangze behavior. He'd offer a way out, a chance for me to retreat, but he would never, ever, stoop to apologizing or reaching out first. A wave of unexpected relief washed over me when I learned my trip would be extended. Another week in Zhengzhou meant another week to postpone facing Jiangze, to delay the inevitable conversation. with my parents about our broken engagement. The weight of these unspoken realities pressed down on me, an invisible burden. I felt trapped, unable to retreat, yet paralyzed to move forward. Just then, Su-ming appeared beside me, hands shoved deep into his pockets. He bumped my shoulder playfully, his face beaming with boyish enthusiasm. "Hey, little Lin, business trips are a drag, huh? Come on, Suji's treating you to a movie." The word movie triggered an instinctive recoil. I shook my head, a reflexive refusal. But Su-ming was already herding me towards the elevators, ignoring my protests. Come on, come on. The rest of the team's waiting downstairs. Little Lin, you can't be a loner." And so, faced with a gaggle of smiling faces waiting in the lobby, I found myself unable to refuse. "Life's already tough enough, Su Ming declared, "we need more comedies in our lives." And with that, he overruled any objections and picked the latest slapstick comedy. The movie was surprisingly good. From the opening scene, the cinema erupted with laughter. But as I watched the ridiculous antics unfold on screen, the emotions I'd been suppressing for days finally broke free. In the darkened theater, amidst the peals of laughter, I began to cry. Silent, convulsive sobs racked my body. I frantically scrubbed at my eyes, but the tears just kept coming, a relentless flood. Su-ming, turning to check on me, caught sight of my tear-streaked face. A flicker of surprise, then concern, crossed his features. He quickly averted his gaze, feigning nonchalance. Sensing the curious glances from other moviegoers, he shoved a pack of tissues at me, then shrugged off his jacket and draped it over my head, effectively shielding my face from view. Little Lin, he muttered, his voice a theatrical whisper, "your sense of humor is seriously warped. This cheesy flick? Crying from laughter? Really?" After the movie ended, Su-ming shooed away our colleagues, settling back down beside me as we waited for the theater to empty. Once everyone else had shuffled out, Su-ming patted my head awkwardly. "Big brother's gonna hit the restroom. Remember to bring my jacket out, okay?" As his whistling receded into the distance, I lifted my tear-streaked face, quietly wiped away the last of the tears, and pulled out my makeup bag, meticulously repairing the damage. When I emerged from the restroom, Su-ming was waiting in the lobby, as if nothing unusual had occurred. He took his jacket from me with a casual grin, playfully teasing, "Short legs, slow walker." Then, he positioned himself in front of me, setting a leisurely pace towards the exit. Trailing behind him, I murmured a soft, "Thank you." Su-ming waved a dismissive hand over his shoulder, not even turning around. "Suji's loaded. Treating you to a movie? No big deal." As we stepped out of the mall, Su-ming abruptly stopped. I looked up, and my breath hitched in my throat. Blocking our path, his figure silhouetted against the evening lights, stood Jiangze. As if staking his claim, Jiangze ignored Su-ming's questioning glance, his gaze locked intensely on me. "Zhao Zhao," he commanded, his voice tight, "come here." His face was a mask of thunderous anger. I didn't answer, just forced a strained, brittle smile at Su-ming. "Suji," I said, my voice wavering slightly, "you can head back. See you tomorrow." Su-ming sized up the charged atmosphere between Jiangze and me, then nodded silently and left. Jiangze's eyes blazed with displeasure at my interaction with Su-ming. His voice was icy as he demanded, "Who is he?" I remained silent, meeting his furious gaze with a forced calm, though my hands clenched into fists at my sides. Finally, in the tense, silent standoff, I was the first to yield. "Jiangze," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "let's go watch a movie." Jiangze blinked, taken aback. Then, his face hardening, he nodded curtly. I turned and walked back into the mall, purchasing 2 tickets for the very same movie we'd just seen. Throughout the process, I didn't speak to Jiangze, and he followed me in silence, his expression grim. We sat through the entire movie, a second time, side by side, stony-faced and silent. When the end credits rolled, the audience began to stir, and Jiangze's face was a study in suppressed fury. "You and him," he spat, his voice low and venomous, "you watched this movie just now?" I turned to face him, meeting his simmering rage with a bright, brittle smile. "A movie for 2, already seen by a third party," I said, my voice laced with saccharine sweetness. "Disgusting, isn't it?" "Jiangze," I continued, my smile widening, though it didn't reach my eyes, what are you so angry about? Isn't this exactly how you've always treated me? Jiangze didn't seem to grasp the full weight of my words. He just pressed his lips together, a tight line of silence. As I turned, my face set in a cold mask, ready to walk away, he suddenly seized my wrist. A wave of revulsion washed over me, a visceral chill that went bone deep. Instinctively, I yanked my arm free, breaking his hold. Jiangze recoiled, a flicker of disbelief in his eyes. He moved his lips, as if to speak, to protest, but in the end, all he managed was a flat, emotionless statement. Zhao Zhao, we're getting married. Those words landed like a physical blow, the weight of them crushing me, even heavier than the night I'd uncovered the truth. He knows, I thought, the realization hitting me with sickening force. He knows what he's doing is wrong. He understands the depth of the insult, the magnitude of his betrayal. He knew, yet he did it anyway. It wasn't just that he couldn't forget her, every moment we'd spent together, every shared experience, had been tainted. A constant echo of their past. 3 years of my life, reduced to a mere footnote, a hollow ritual in the commemoration of another love story. Anger, humiliation, a crushing sense of helplessness, a maelstrom of conflicting emotions surged within me. My eyes burned, a raw, aching dryness, but the tears refused to come. I didn't know whether to rage at Jiangze or mourn the wasted years of my youth, the sincerity of my affections thrown back in my face. I stared at him, a hollow laugh escaping my lips. Jiangze, I asked, my voice dangerously quiet, what do you take me for? What does this marriage even mean to you? My questions hung in the air, sharp and accusatory. Is it compensation for stringing me along for 3 years? Or some kind of twisted power play, a way to show off to Qiao Mingyue? Jiangze, if you loved her so damn much, why did you even bother with me? I hurled question after question at him, each one a desperate attempt to vent the pent-up resentment, the suffocating humiliation that had been building for years. But Jiangze remained infuriatingly composed, his expression unruffled, as if my pain, my raw, exposed emotions, were utterly inconsequential to him. He looked at me as if I were a stranger, an unfamiliar specimen under a microscope. It was a stark, brutal realization, love, or at least the performance of it, could be so convincingly fabricated. Or perhaps, he hadn't even bothered to feign love at all. Maybe the meager scraps of affection he'd carelessly tossed my way had simply been enough for me, in my naivete, to believe I'd somehow stumbled into his entire world. My questions, my outrage, my desperate need for answers, they seemed pointless, swallowed by his indifference. Yet, I held his gaze, locked in a silent battle. But this time I wouldn't be the one to back down. I watched as his fists clenched and unclenched, a silent internal struggle playing out on his face. After a long, agonizing pause, he finally spoke, his voice strained, a pathetic attempt at justification. Lin Zhao, if I still wanted to be with her, if I was still hung up on her, do you really think you would have even been in the picture for the last 3 years? Something inside me snapped. Without thinking, I lashed out, my hand connecting with his face, with a sharp crack. Jiangze's head snapped to the side, a red flush blooming instantly on his cheek where I'd struck him. His eyes widened, filled with stunned disbelief. Yes, this wasn't the Lin Zhao he knew, the Lin Zhao he expected. In his mind, I was supposed to be gentle, docile, the quiet, unassuming girl who'd be too shy to correct someone if they pressed the wrong floor in the elevator. Not this furious, screaming woman, resorting to violence in a public place, a shrew, as he'd probably label me in his thoughts. He seemed to have conveniently forgotten the kind of grit, the sheer resilience it took to claw my way up from where I started. Lin Zhao had never been a pushover, never been a nice girl in the way he seemed to crave. I silently cradled my hand, still tingling from the impact, behind my back. A mocking smile curled my lips. Jiangze, I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm, I've wanted to hit you for a long time. You're the one who did something disgusting, yet you act like you're doing me a favor by offering me a chance to forgive you. 3 years, Jiangze. 3 years you dragged me to the same movies you watched with her, fed me the same food you ate together, even the anniversary gifts were carbon copies of what you gave her. My voice rose, each word laced with acid. Jiangze, do you have any idea how nauseating that is? A flicker of something, a ripple of unease, finally crossed Jiangze's carefully constructed mask of composure. He took a step forward, reaching out, as if to take my hand, but I recoiled instantly, stepping back out of his reach. He didn't seem fazed by my rejection. Instead, he plastered on a nauseatingly tender expression, his eyes fixed on mine. Zhao Zhao, please, believe me, it's over between her and me. She's tried to get back together, countless times, but I've always refused. Zhao Zhao, he pleaded, his voice taking on a softer, more persuasive tone. Everyone has a past. Why are you fixating on this now, at this crucial moment? Just know this, the woman I want to marry, the only woman I want to marry, is you. Isn't that enough? I stared into Jiangze's eyes, and it was as if a veil had been lifted. He was suddenly transparent, utterly predictable. I saw through him, saw past the carefully constructed facade. Even now, faced with the wreckage of our relationship, all he cared about was maintaining his own carefully curated image, preserving his precious face. I took another step back, creating more distance between us, and delivered my final farewell. Jiangze, I'm not marrying you. Never. I don't want your pity, your crumbs of affection. You can keep them. I won't tell anyone about this, about your secret. But I expect you to leave me alone. Let's just part ways, cleanly, without any more drama. You can go back to mooning over your moonlight, and I'm going back to being myself, the person I was before I made the mistake of falling for you. Neither his actions, nor my 3 years of being played, were exactly things to be proud of. I'd hoped for a clean break, a dignified exit. But Jiangze, predictably, wouldn't let me go that easily. No sooner had I returned to my hotel room than my parents' call came through. The moment I answered, a barrage of angry accusations erupted from the other end of the line. Lin Zhao, are you trying to ruin everything? So what if Jiangze has an ex-girlfriend? They're not in contact, they haven't done anything wrong. What are you making such a fuss about? My mother's voice was shrill, laced with exasperation. The wedding announcements are out, invitations sent to everyone we know. The whole world knows. You think you can just call it off whenever you feel like it? You might not care about your reputation, but your father and I still have faces to save. Let me tell you, Lin Zhao, Jiangze is our son-in-law, and that's final. You even think about breaking up with him, and we'll disown you. Consider yourself an orphan. The line went dead, leaving a ringing silence in its wake. The world outside might be quiet, but inside, chaos reigned. The fallout didn't end there. Within a single evening, it seemed everyone in our shared social circle knew. My phone buzzed incessantly, a constant stream of well-meaning but suffocating messages, all urging me to reconsider, to reconcile. In everyone else's eyes, Jiangze's sentimental pining, his harmless remembering, didn't even register as infidelity, let alone emotional abuse. Everyone told me everyone has a past, lectured me about being understanding, urged me not to be stubborn. They were even, inexplicably, touched by Jiangze's supposed deep love, completely oblivious to the pain, the humiliation, I was drowning in. Exhausted, suffocated by the relentless barrage of unwanted advice, I started blocking numbers, one by one, cutting off the toxic tide of support. I was the one who had been wronged, yet I was the one being crucified, shackled by the weight of their moral judgments, trapped in their suffocating expectations. In this public trial by social media, I, the victim, had become the accused. Just when I felt like I was teetering on the brink of collapse, an unexpected encounter occurred. Jiangze's childhood friend, the one who'd inadvertently revealed the Weibo account, reached out and asked to meet. To my surprise, he didn't echo the chorus of Jiangze's defenders. Instead, he offered a sheepish smile, a gesture of genuine apology. Jiangji asked me to talk to you, to explain things, he said, but I don't regret it. You deserve to know the truth. It's only fair. Unsure how to react, I managed a weak smile and a mumbled thank you. He shook his head. Jiangji and Mingyue. Everyone in our circle knew about it. We all understood Jiangji would never truly let go of Mingyue. Honestly, before you came along, we were all betting on when they would get back together. I stopped, stunned. And after I came along? I asked, the question hanging in the air. He hesitated for a moment, then answered with startling honesty. We started betting on how long it would take you to figure out the truth. A bitter laugh escaped me. Your moral compass is truly worthy of being Jiangze's best friend. He chuckled, a self-deprecating sound. Birds of a feather, right? Naturally. Looking at his easy smile, a strange thought sparked in my mind. You're in love with Qiao Mingyue, aren't you? His smile faltered, then vanished completely, replaced by a stark admission. Yes. So, you let it slip on purpose that night, didn't you? I pressed, relentless. It was for Qiao Mingyue? A wry, self-mocking smile touched his lips. His voice was quiet, almost hesitant. Yes. If you hadn't found out, you would have actually married him. And Mingyue? Mingyue would have been devastated. His blatant honesty, his unapologetic admission of manipulation, left me speechless. Finally, I managed a single, flat sentence. You and Jiangze, you're both scum. His smile returned, faint but present. His voice remained calm. Yes, scum. But the moon doesn't shine for me. But Mingyue loves him. So, I had to create an opportunity for her. I stared at the raw emotion etched on his face, and a wave of nausea washed over me. Your so-called deep love is disgusting. He shrugged, unfazed. Thank you for the compliment. But I suspect, he continued, his tone shifting, becoming more conversational, you'd be more interested in their whole story, the real reason they broke up, wouldn't you? I'd thought that Jiangze had become a stranger to me, a ghost from a past life. Listening to the story of his relationship with Qiao Mingyue, I reasoned, would be no more emotionally charged than hearing the romantic history of any random stranger. But as the story unfolded, I found myself far from unmoved. It wasn't exactly peace, but it was a different kind of turbulence. In the days that followed, I continued to work, methodically blocking every number that dared to offer unsolicited advice. Once my parents' calls also joined the blacklist, Jiangze seemed to lose his remaining leverage. Finally, he reached out himself, initiating contact. We met at a quiet cafe. The dark circles under his eyes were stark, betraying his sleepless nights. The usual air of calm self-assurance, the effortless composure, was gone. I'd always seen him as a rock, someone dependable, unflappable. No matter what problems I faced, he'd always been there, offering calm analysis, never betraying a hint of panic. But now, in the ruins of our relationship, I understood. It wasn't maturity, it wasn't strength. It was simply indifference. He nervously turned his coffee cup in its saucer, his voice heavy with self-pity. Lin Zhao, all I did was. I couldn't forget her. Is that really such a terrible crime? Am I so unforgivably wrong that you won't even give me a chance to explain? He looked up, his eyes pleading. And besides that one thing, forgetting her. In the last 3 years, have I ever done anything to hurt you? Haven't I been good to you? His plaintive questions, his wounded self-righteousness, left me cold, untouched. My inner landscape mirrored his own, devoid of emotion, a barren wasteland. Jiangze, I said, my voice flat, devoid of inflection, those few movies you replayed, month after month, over and over again. Were you watching the movie, or were you reliving your past? You said you hated long-distance relationships, I continued, my voice gaining strength. You complained about Suzhou to Shanghai being too far, a mere 100 kilometers. But do you remember how far it is from Gansu to Zhengzhou? Over 1,000 kilometers, Jiangze. And you loved her from that distance, for years. You said you hated traveling, that even an hour's drive was too much effort to see me. But for her, when she simply said she missed you, you'd endure 16 hours in a hard-seat train, just to spend a few hours with her. 36 hours round trip, almost every week, never late, never complaining. Jiangze, I asked, my voice laced with scorn, how did you love me? With those 200-plus hard-seat train tickets? Her tears made your heart ache, you wanted to spoil her like a child. But when I cried, it was a sign of immaturity? Jiangze, I finished, my voice rising, where is this love you claim to have for me? Where is this being good to me you're so proud of? Can you even see it? My words hit their mark. Jiangze's lips moved, but no sound came out. He opened and closed his mouth, searching for a rebuttal, a defense, but finding none. Finally, after a long, agonizing silence, all he could manage was a weak, pathetic plea. Zhao Zhao, no matter what happened in the past, with her. Now, the woman I want to marry, the only one, is still you. The sheer, breathtaking audacity of his hollow defense triggered a bitter, mirthless laugh. I stared into his eyes, finally stripping away the last layers of self-deception, exposing the ugly truth at his core. Jiangze, I said, my voice icily calm, is it really so hard to admit you don't love me? The woman you want to marry. It's never been me. Anyone would have done. Anyone who didn't drink, didn't go clubbing, wasn't surrounded by a crowd of male admirers. Anyone who wasn't Xiao Mingyue. You chose me because I don't laugh much, don't cause trouble, don't throw tantrums. Because I'm the least like her. Jiangze, I actually thought, for a while, that maybe, just maybe, you loved me a little. But even then, I knew you loved her more. But I was wrong. I wasn't even a substitute. You just used me, as a prop in your memory, a human-sized cardboard cutout, or maybe just a convenient backdrop. My voice remained steady, devoid of emotion, as I delivered my final, damning indictment. Jiangze, you fooled me so completely. Jiangze just stared back at me, stunned, utterly deflated. All he could manage was a single, whispered word. Sorry. A hollow laugh bubbled up inside me. 3 years, I murmured, shaking my head, 3 years. And this is who I gave my heart to. On the day I moved out of Jiangze's apartment, he made one last, desperate attempt to stop me. Zhao Zhao, he pleaded, his voice thick with desperation, can't you stay? Even now, you're still the perfect marriage material in my eyes. I looked at him, a faint, almost pitying smile touching my lips. I probably am, I agreed, my voice soft, yet firm. But you're not good enough for me. In fact, I added, my smile fading, replaced by a cold, clear gaze, you're not good enough for anyone. You pretend to be so deeply in love with Xiao Mingyue, everyone knows it, you're supposedly consumed by it. But the truth is, I continued, my voice gaining strength, it's all a lie. It's because she went clubbing, because she drank, behaviors you disapproved of, that you felt betrayed, like she'd thrown your goodness back in your face. You felt your love was disrespected, cheapened. And that's why you broke up with her so decisively, never looking back, even when she begged you to reconsider. But then, I said, my voice laced with contempt, why did you take those old train tickets, engineer a chance encounter with her? To let her see them, to make her think you still loved her. To give her false hope? You maintain this facade of being heartbroken, utterly devoted to her memory, but you don't actually love anyone. The only person you truly love, Jiangze, is yourself. Someone like you, I concluded, my voice ringing with conviction, doesn't deserve love, doesn't deserve marriage. You're destined to end up alone. My words seemed to finally penetrate his carefully constructed defenses. A flicker of something, a raw, exposed emotion, crossed his face. He mumbled something, words garbled, indistinct. Finally, he managed to stammer, Zhao Zhao, even if you don't love me anymore. You can't say things like that about me. Jiangze, I cut him off, my voice sharp, dismissive, just drop the act. I've seen enough of your fake sincerity, your phony, deep love. I'm done. I delivered my final, definitive farewell, my voice cold as ice. Don't ever contact me again, you piece of garbage. Our breakup became a spectacle, a widely circulated piece of gossip. In Jiangze's established social circles, it was unlikely any self-respecting woman would consider dating him anytime soon. Of course, there were always a few, swayed by his carefully crafted narrative of deep, enduring love, who extended offers of sympathy, even romantic interest. But Jiangze rejected them all. His object of nostalgic longing seemed to have shifted, from Xiao Mingyue to me. But all of it, the longing, the regret, the performative grief, just made me sick. I refused his attempts at reconciliation, turned down his pathetic offers of friendship. I didn't leave Shanghai, but I did leave my old job, starting fresh with a new company. The new job was demanding, filled with frequent business trips and long hours, but the pay was significantly higher. My parents, predictably, called, still lamenting my loss of Jiangze, convinced I'd thrown away a golden opportunity. But when I sent them a copy of my first paycheck, the hefty sum silencing their usual criticisms, they finally went quiet. I tried to ask the question casually, hoping to sound nonchalant, but my voice still caught, a tremor betraying my vulnerability. "Mom, Dad," I asked, my voice choked with emotion, "your daughter. I'm not so bad, am I?" The affirmation I craved, the reassurance I desperately needed, never came. Instead, I received their usual, pragmatic response. "Just because you're earning more, doesn't mean you can get cocky. We can't help you out financially, you know. You need to save." I was used to these kinds of conversations, their lack of emotional support, their relentless practicality, but a sharp pang of disappointment still twisted in my chest. "Get used to it," I told myself. "Just get used to it." I was getting used to everything, except perhaps for the sudden, persistent presence of Su Ming in my life. Because, to put it mildly, he was incredibly, incessantly, loud. I doubted I'd ever forget the first thing he said to me after he'd relocated to Shanghai, the words delivered with his characteristic, booming enthusiasm, "Little Lin, Suji's got a proposition for you. Let's talk about dating." Their story. Jiang Zhe and Xiao Mingyue's story began in high school. They were deskmates for 3 years, and for 3 years, Xiao Mingyue tormented him relentlessly. Back then, Jiang Zhe excelled in math, while Xiao Mingyue's math skills were, to put it kindly, abysmal. After Jiang Zhe aced yet another math test, scoring a near-perfect 130, Xiao Mingyue suddenly proposed that he tutor her. As payment, she promised to bring him snacks from home every day. The tutoring sessions were a farce. Xiao Mingyue never actually paid attention. Instead, she'd stare intently at Jiang Zhe's face while he explained problems. Every time he asked if she understood, she'd nod vigorously, feigning comprehension. But when the test results came back, she'd inevitably gotten the answers wrong. At these moments, she'd playfully pinch and punch Jiang Zhe, resorting to all sorts of mock outrage and playful accusations. "Why did I get it wrong again?" she'd demand, feigning indignation. "Are you trying to sabotage me? Are you deliberately teaching me badly?" These playful skirmishes became a regular occurrence. Initially, Jiang Zhe found them incredibly irritating, but over time, he seemed to grow accustomed to them, even to enjoy them. Their relationship officially transitioned from friendship to romance one weekend. Xiao Mingyue announced she was treating Jiang Zhe to dinner, but with one condition: he had to bring his math test papers. During their study session at the restaurant, Xiao Mingyue, predictably, remained inattentive, her focus drifting. But then, suddenly, she leaned in and pressed a quick kiss to the corner of Jiang Zhe's mouth. Caught completely off guard, Jiang Zhe froze, his mind blank. Before he could even process what had happened, Xiao Mingyue's face flushed crimson, and she launched into a performance of mock indignation. "Jiang Zhe," she declared, her voice trembling with feigned outrage, "you have to take responsibility for that." And just like that, they were a couple. After high school graduation, Jiang Zhe chose Lanzhou in Gansu province for university, while Xiao Mingyue stayed local. They'd spend hours on video calls every day, seemingly never running out of things to say. In Jiang Zhe's eyes, Xiao Mingyue was eternally childlike, sensitive, someone who needed constant care and protection. But during that long-distance period, this child seemed to develop a surprising resilience. But even the strongest children have their breaking points. One day, during a video call, Xiao Mingyue's laughter suddenly dissolved into sobs. "I miss you," she choked out, her voice thick with tears. Jiang Zhe panicked. To save money, he booked a hard-seat train ticket for Friday afternoon, enduring 16 hours of uncomfortable travel, all for a fleeting weekend visit. From then on, Jiang Zhe made regular trips back to Zhengzhou, at least twice a month. Sometimes as often as 4 times. He kept up this grueling routine for 3 years, until his dedication became legendary among Xiao Mingyue's friends and classmates, though his own classmates in Lanzhou just thought he was a fool. But Jiang Zhe didn't care. He took on part-time tutoring jobs, helped other students with their homework, scrimping and saving every penny to afford the train fares to see her. Jiang Zhe truly loved Xiao Mingyue. But when they broke up, it was equally decisive, equally unyielding. The reason for their breakup? Jiang Zhe disapproved of Xiao Mingyue's drinking habits. More specifically, he disliked her going to bars, KTVs, nightclubs, any venue where alcohol was involved. Every time she went, it triggered a fight. After repeated offenses, Jiang Zhe began to feel profoundly betrayed. He felt he'd never done anything to hurt Xiao Mingyue. He'd always tried his best to fulfill her desires, to give her everything she wanted, everything she liked. He'd even refrained from doing things she disliked. But perhaps, because she believed Jiangze was utterly, hopelessly devoted to her, Qiao Mingyue took his repeated warnings for granted, dismissing his concerns. She ignored the chances he gave her to change. Finally, Jiangze walked away, without a backward glance. No matter how much she pleaded, he refused to reconsider. It was then, perhaps, that Qiao Mingyue finally understood the gravity of her mistakes, the depth of her loss. She changed her ways, shed all her bad habits. But Jiangze remained unmoved. He seemed to derive a perverse satisfaction from her remorse, a sense of vindication. He believed that people only truly learned to cherish what they had after they'd lost it completely. So, despite his own lingering regret, his own moments of longing, he refused to turn back. A year after their breakup, Jiangze encountered a reformed Qiao Mingyue. It was at their favorite snack shop, a place filled with shared memories. She was carrying the bag he'd hand-knitted for her, a gift from their happier days. Inside, she'd carefully placed all the train tickets from his countless trips to Zhengzhou, a thick stack of paper mementos. She presented them to him, hoping to touch his heart, to reignite their lost love, to prove her change of heart. But the gesture backfired spectacularly. Seeing those tickets only solidified Jiangze's conviction that leaving her had been the right decision. His departure had finally forced her to recognize, to value, his past sacrifices, his unwavering devotion. He was satisfied with this twisted validation. From that point on, almost as an act of spite, a final nail in the coffin of their past, Jiangze publicly declared his newfound preference for gentle, well-behaved women. He announced that his future partner would be the polar opposite of the old Qiao Mingyue, and definitely not the new, reformed Qiao Mingyue either. He even joked that if any woman dared to make him travel over 1,000 kilometers to see her again, he'd give her a piece of his mind. He'd said it all, and he'd seemingly done it all. Except, the one who ended up paying the price, the one who was left feeling utterly disgusted, was me.